DJ Armstrong, drop my shit.
I think anyone in the forefront of music or anything should push.
Neil Armstrong speaking.
Today we are joined by a native New Yorker, and this man's come up has been nothing short of incredible. He started his career performing in front of small 100-person venues, growing to large-scale music festivals, and this is where it starts to get quite incredible. He started touring with Mr. Sean Carter, aka Jay-Z. He's worked with some of the biggest brands in the world, and most incredibly, played at President Obama's inauguration. DJ Neil Armstrong, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Whereabouts are you joining us from now?
I actually live most of the time in Yokohama, Japan.
Nice.
I split time between here and Hawaii. I rarely get home to New York these days, especially post-COVID. But yeah, I live out here in Yokohama, about 45 minutes away from Tokyo by driving.
Oh, wow. Yeah, beautiful.
I'm definitely keen to dive right in. So like, obviously you've had a pretty cool life from my perspective. So let's just kick it off from the very start. You know, how did you even get your way into music, but maybe even before that? What was like the story like?
My story starts in New York City. I was born and raised in Queens. I got introduced to hip hop just, via the radio, I guess. At the time, I'm almost 50 years old. I hope I don't look it.
No, you don't.
That's good to hear. But during the 80s, like the first burgeoning of hip hop to like a larger platform, that was when like the Break-In movie came out and Crush Groove came out, and not the earliest hip hop artists, but like Run DMC and those type of groups. At this time, let's just say it's the early 80s, hip hop started to emerge as a phenomenon, and at the time it was kind of treated as a trend. They're like, I'm not a trend,
a fad.
Fad. There we go. It was just a fad. Yeah, no one's gonna, it is whatever. There's nothing. In particular, I really gravitated toward the whole graffiti thing and definitely the b-boy thing. I thought it was amazing to see these kids just, doing all this acrobatic type stuff, and of course the music, right? And then fast forward a little bit later, late 80s, I get introduced to some of the bigger groups like NWA and Eric B. and Rakim from my pastor's son. So, pastor's kids are kind of known as, they're kind of troublemakers, right? Because their parents tend to be a little strict. And so he gave me NWA tape and Eric B. and Rakim tape. And then I end up kind of learning about hip hop from kids in my church, I guess. There was a lot of kids from Long Island that were African American that attended my church events, and that's how I discovered De La Soul in like 1988. And then I just became a super fan after that. It was just the music spoke to me, just the culture. And, this is often called the golden era of hip hop, or the beginning of it. Fast forward again later on, I actually am going to college in Manhattan, a school called Cooper Union, and there is just this burgeoning kind of DJ hip hop world that is coalescing at this time. There was a store called Fat Beats that was opened right when I started going to college, and maybe like five months after I started going to college, it was set up 5 blocks away from my college. So I used to just go there and hang out all the time. And then I met a bunch of really important DJs called the X-Men, who ended up becoming my mentors, and they taught me how to beat juggle, and I got into the whole DJ battle scene, and that's pretty much it right there, how I got into the music.
Wow.
Like, that's incredible. It's incredible to kind of like hear that real, like just where it all started and what it's kind of gone into. And one thing you mentioned in there was having those mentors around in the early stage. How did that kind of work in that dynamic for you? How did they kind of take you under their wing? Were you on the decks prior to that, kind of trying to figure it all out yourself? And they're like, hey, like this is how you do it.
I was a fan of the culture. So in particular, there was a couple of DJs. One of them was a guy named Rob Swift. Another guy was named Rock Raider. Another guy was named Mrs. Sinister. And another guy was named Total Eclipse. And at the time, they were really big in the DJ battle scene. One of the biggest crews. I couldn't tell you why they took me under their wing, but they did. I like to think it's because I was cool, but who knows? As you can see, like I'm Filipino. I'm Filipino American, and you know, in general terms, there wasn't a lot of Filipinos involved in hip hop at the time, especially on the East Coast. On the West Coast is a different story. There was already a lot of DJs out there, and they had a whole nother subculture situation going on with the mobiles. There's like a mobile DJ scene, like, you know, they would bring all their speakers to do parties and Sweet 16s and cotillions and, you know, all that type of stuff. But on the East Coast, as far as, you know, it being the home of hip hop, there was not that many definitely who had reached a certain level. And a bunch of us were in a DJ battle together, including that kid Total Eclipse. And Total Eclipse, from there, we all just kind of started hanging out. And at the time, I was a terrible DJ. At the time, there were no DJ schools. There was nothing of that nature. So the only way we could learn is by watching. So, you know, and this is pre-internet time. So we would watch videos that would just kind of circulate in the DJ circles. Like we would just hand them out to each other, pass them around, that type of thing. And there were already DJ battles going on, and every so often they would sell videotapes of battles from the past. So we were all kind of studying the same type of stuff. And then I was actually writing for hip hop magazines. So, you know, I had the fortunate situation of having a really good education. And so it was really easy for me to approach people and be like, you know, hey, I can kind of provide a service for you, whether it be writing something or doing internet stuff. I actually later on, I learned how to program after I graduated from college, and I built Loud Records' first bulletin board system. You know, this is early on. That's how people communicated. They would have like bulletin board forums, and I actually built that for them because I knew people in the hip hop world, but I also was doing technology stuff, and they were like, yo, how do we make this? And I knew the right people, and I was like, oh, I could do that for you really easily. So I was kind of always doing this thing where I would join my worlds together. So when I actually approached some of the members of the X-Men, I was like, hey, I write for internet magazine, which, you know, that was a new idea back then. There was no Facebook. It was like Alta Vista, and there was no Google. Like it's just a different time period. And I approached the X-Men like, hey, I'd love to write an article about you guys. And then, and I did write an article about them, but I ended up also kind of learning how to DJ from them. So, inadvertently, inadvertently. And yeah, we formed like a lot of friendships were formed at that stage, and all that time period ended up kind of allowing me to do what I got to do in the last like 5 to 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
So to take it a little bit further in the future, when did you realize like, wow, this could actually be my thing? Like DJing is
Oh
for me.
man, I didn't really think of DJing as a career, especially back then. You know, there was no Pauly D's or DJ AMs to be like, wow, these guys are gonna be, you know, you could DJ and become rich. So it wasn't even in my mind to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this forever. You guys look super young, but in about 2001 or 2002, that was like there was like a massive internet crash. That was like the first big one where like, yeah, like the first big internet bubble bursting was a situation where like, you know, people who were like CEOs and making 6-figure salaries or even more were all of a sudden out of a job, and they ended up working as baristas at Starbucks. Like that was a common story at the time. And I was actually one of the people who that happened to. I unceremoniously got fired because I was so high up, and honestly, I shouldn't have even been in that role, but I had kind of I was forced into a choice of, well, what do you want to do with your life? Like, do you want to go back and work and possibly not have such a high position and kind of do what you're doing, or do you want to pursue the music thing? And so I was like, all right, F it. Let me see what I could do with the music thing. And fortunately, I had a really good team that joined me that really taught me how to treat what I did as a brand, as opposed to just, you know, I'm like a performer or I just DJ. And at the time, that really wasn't around, that mentality, as opposed to now where everybody and their mother is a freaking influencer, and you know, it's just a different time now. But back then that didn't exist to do that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Like, how did you construct your brand? Like, what went into that? What was the kind of forceful kind of thoughts?
I had a manager at the time, and he's still a really good friend of mine. He doesn't really do, he doesn't manage my type of artist. He does a lot of visual artists. His name is Sky Galatly, and Sky currently represents a lot of visual artists. In particular, Futura 2000 is one of his bigger clients. This was in the earlier ages of the internet again. So I was actually at the time like Hypebeast, which was, you know, a tastemaker website. They actually had blogs, and I was one of the bloggers. My manager got me that situation. I would end up doing a lot of strategic partnerships. Like, for example, I ended up DJing as an early influencer for Adidas. I was under contract with them. And I'm saying this with no, like, I'm not trying to be a snob. I'm not trying to be a jerk. Like, I represented what Kanye would come to be. I was this street level influencer who they decided like, oh, well, we're going to sponsor you. We're going to pay you to do our events. We're going to flow you product. We're going to use you as a billboard. And yeah, our purpose is in return, you're going to help us sell some clothes and some shirts and blah, blah, blah. So I did a couple of ads with them, like a Star Wars ad. At the time, they were doing something with Star Wars, and it was like me, David Beckham, Snoop Dogg, Daft Punk. All this to say, like, I was doing a lot of really cool stuff, and that was all spearheaded by my manager at the time, who really understood that synergy between an artist and a brand at the time. And there wasn't a lot of other people doing that. You know, it wasn't like possibly the only other person was A-Track at the time. This is before he started Fool's Gold, actually. Yeah, all of that was my manager, Sky. We were really involved in streetwear culture at the time. So yeah, we got to do a lot of cool stuff back then.
Sure. Well, I'm actually, I know you, I feel like I know what your answer is going to be for this, but might as well ask you, would you prefer the golden era of hip hop or hip hop now?
I mean, me personally, as far as a listener, I like the golden era of hip hop, of course. I wouldn't say I'm as bad. You know, there's a lot of gatekeeper type attitude toward music and blah blah blah. But the fact of the matter is, hip hop, in particular, and pop music, and you know, hip hop is pop music now, is really controlled, driven by youth culture. It's not old people. Like that's just how it's always been. I'm not particularly into certain things that fall under the hip hop umbrella nowadays. But I also am not one of those guys who's gonna be like, everything is terrible. Well, you know. But yeah, the golden era was the time before money took over and before hip hop was pop culture. So the people who it was made for was a lot more defined, and the people involved, their goal was to make good music, not to make viral TikTok videos. So it's just different. The goal is different.
One thing that you mentioned, so you spoke about how you saw Tupac and Biggie concert live, and I feel like the generation before us boys was very much the Pac and Biggie kind of scene, but we grew up, and I myself personally, and I know the boys as well, listening to a lot of Jay-Z. And I mean, doing the reading on you, I think that's an absolutely incredible part of your journey, and it is a fanboy moment for us boys as well. How did that kind of all come about, and what was that experience like?
So again, my manager, Sky, he contacts me one day and he writes me an email, and he's like, you're in line to be to be Jay-Z's tour DJ. And I entirely ignore it. I actually have the email if you do want it. I still have it. And I just ignore it because it's just ridiculous. I don't even know what you're talking about, dude. And at the time, there was a woman named Vashti Kola, who is maybe like a couple years ago, she was definitely the first woman who had her own Jordan. But she used to work at Def Jam for Jay when Jay was the president. And she was a big fan of mine. She used to come out and watch me DJ these like super small in-stores. Vashti did the 1992 party. Drake mentions her. He said in one of his songs, he says, I used to be with Vashti at Santos. That song, Tom Cantos, Walk It, Talk It by Migos, featuring Drake.
Oh yeah, walk it like I talk it.
So he mentions Vashti. Like, we were all friends with each other, and she told Jay, and this is the story that I've heard, that she was asked by Jay, like, who should I get to DJ, and basically to do what A-Track was doing for Kanye. That's what he was looking for. Jay wanted to introduce a band. So Vashti tells him to hire, he's like, oh, you need to get Neil. And the difference between me and most other DJs at the time, who might have been bigger, who might have been more well-known, is I was doing all the streetwear stuff. I was blogging for Hypebeast, and I was doing my own thing, which was very different from everyone else. I was making mixtapes that were very more like art pieces. Because of my association in the streetwear world, I had already been doing stuff with Adidas. I had already been doing a bunch of stuff just within that streetwear realm and culture. I was able to, I guess, have a tryout audition with Jay. I get the email on a Wednesday, and by like that Sunday, I'm auditioning, I guess, for Jay, which I didn't realize at the time I was doing an audition. And day after that, I'm in front of 10,000 people, like very quickly. So like really that little situation happened like maybe in like 5 days. Like they didn't tell me anything. They didn't tell me like, yo, you need to pack clothes because we're going on tour. Like, yeah, I end up getting to do the tour with him. And it, you know, as you can imagine, it was pretty crazy and unexpected. At that time, I was entirely in a different kind of musical scene. You know, I was more of a underground DJ, and Questlove and A-Track actually were like my musical directors. So when we were rehearsing, they were there with me. And Questlove, I don't know if he remembers telling me this, but he was like, you know, when people found out that you were the one who got the job with Jay, it was like, you know, people, at least in that, you know, real hip hop world were like, yo, like finally we got like they felt like they won. Cause usually the people in my tier wouldn't get that opportunity. I got to do a lot of really cool things, events. Glastonbury is probably the biggest one. I got to perform at Madison Square Garden. Right after I was with Jay, I started doing stuff with Adidas Strong. And actually I did a lot more crazy stuff post Jay. So like, you know, that's when I was doing the ads with Adidas. I did Lollapalooza. I did Clock and Flap out in Hong Kong. So I did a lot of cooler stuff. I was able, you know, a lot of people viewed like Jay, like, well, that got to be the top, you know, like what else can you do? And, you know, a really good DJ, that's not the top. So saying like A-Track, everyone thought he was, but like he left Kanye. He left the tour because he wanted to start Fool's Gold. And I'm quite positive there was a large number of people, including myself, who was like, why would you leave a gig with Kanye to start a record label? Like that doesn't even make sense to me. But look, I mean, look at his trajectory after that. He makes Barbra Streisand. They put out Kid Cudi's first song. He's on the cover of Billboard. You know, if he didn't believe in himself and thought this was all I could do, he would have never gotten to do any of those crazy things. So clearly he made the right decision. I guess it's really interesting. I was a lot older than most people on tour. Most people who do the tours, or like the other musicians, were like in their 20s. I was already like 35 maybe. And so they would always kind of laugh like, what the hell? Well, first off, I look like a child, so, and I sound like a child, so what's that about? But I always kind of knew that, and this is now thinking back, I've never really said this out loud. I knew that my time there was borrowed, or I knew that I wouldn't be doing this forever. Like I knew it. I knew like, who knows? Maybe I'll get to do this for a year, or 2 years, or 3 years, but I don't foresee this being my life forever. And I knew it. So I used to actually videotape everything. This is pre-phone. Like I had a big ass camera and I would just videotape everything, just kind of, because I knew like, this is not forever. This is just a moment in time that I'm getting to do. The idea of making it, I don't know, you know, like I definitely at the time, being a Filipino, especially being a Filipino, there was probably only one other person who was that high profile as a DJ, and that was a guy named Qbert, because this guy Qbert, I don't know if you know who he is, but he's essentially like the Jimi Hendrix of scratching. At the time, me and like, you know, of course I was like, yeah, man, you know, who else is doing anything close to this? But I, like, as I said, I think because I was a lot older, I knew how to handle it, and I knew the expectations of how to continue on when this world wasn't around.
Yeah.
So do you ever go back and watch those videos that you were taking?
I haven't. One of the biggest reasons is because back then, I don't know if you know anything about Sony cameras, like they're not native. Like you need to run them through another program to pull everything off. And I just never did it. There's all this freaking footage that I don't know. After it was done, I had to do something else. So I just never had a chance to even look back on it. Now, the perfect time for me to have looked back on it would have been COVID, when I was sitting on my ass doing absolutely nothing. I messed that up too. So I don't know. Who knows when I'm going to actually look at them. Maybe one day, like when I'm super old, I'll go through them when I thankfully I still have hair. I'm not actually bald. When my hair is gray, I'll sit through and look at it. But yeah, it's so interesting. This is really early on. So Instagram didn't even have video yet. Twitter didn't have video capabilities yet. Instagram was brand new. I remember actually, if you wanted to post a video to Twitter, you had to use like TwitVid, like a totally another thing to load it, and then it would post like a link. And I was like video blogging. Like I'm turning the camera toward myself. I'm walking around, just and I'm like, why was I doing it? Because I don't know if people were doing that yet. Maybe there was one dude named Mastro. Mastro, I think his name was Mastro. He might have been one of the few, but I was recording everything. Us going on the bus, making sandwiches, just entirely random things. Which who knows, who knows how much content is on there. And I would record our rehearsals just because I wanted to remember what we were doing. But yeah, I've never watched it, dude. Like maybe I've watched a quarter of it. The rest of it is just sitting there. And I guess I should do that.
I was just gonna say that'd be awesome to reflect on.
Yeah.
Like, because
Yeah.
I'm like moments in my life that I just look back on and I'm like, wow, yeah, that's awesome.
In your life?
Yeah, well, I mean, like not like and stuff like that, like nothing to your caliber, but it's great to look back on.
Yeah, I think it almost just makes me think of like the Netflix special that could end up being. Like, I think it would just be fucking fascinating as all hell.
Maybe it might be also the most boring Netflix special you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to ask was working with guys like Jay-Z. What did you learn from them? Like, how did his mind kind of work? How did he work as like an entrepreneur and a music mogul?
I mean, during that time, like, that aspect of his life wasn't really available to us. The majority of the time that we were in contact, the most of the band was when we were on stage together. Like, he didn't even know the names of some of he didn't know the name of the horn player. He didn't the guys who played the horns. He didn't know the names of the percussionists. Like, he knew the musical director and he knew me. And that's often because we would have to communicate about the show quite often, because that was one of my roles, was to drop the music. And like the tour we went on was the tour that he actually married Beyonce. Wow. During the tour, he actually took a couple of days off and they got married. There was times when he invited me to hang out in the A-list room, and so it was whatever. He was playing music. He was actually kind of DJing. Gwyneth Paltrow came by to say hi, and Rashida Jones was there. But I got to have some really cool moments. It was cool. It was cool.
I want to talk about the inauguration with President Obama.
Yeah, sure.
Again, how and what was that like? I think that's something that really stuck out to us three boys as well. Like, just, I think, being at that level, at that stage, and meeting someone like President Obama and the people that you would have been surrounded by. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Oh, I unfortunately I didn't actually meet him. The security was really, you would have had to get clearance way beforehand. So I wasn't actually anywhere close to him. We were in the same room, but I didn't get to shake his hand or anything. So I guess, you know, at the time, you need to also remember there had never been a Black president. The idea was really, really far-fetched. That was maybe the point where, you know, celebrity and politics and all those type of things, basically people were recognizing the power of influence in a certain way. And I'm not sure how it came to be exactly, but Jay started, technically speaking, he did not do Obama rallies. We did get out the vote rallies. Now, you know, of course, Obama's opponent at the time was McCain. And yeah, he actually would do this little bit in the thing. He's like, I'm, you know, this is to get out to vote. We're trying to get y'all out to vote. And he would kind of say McCain, like for 2 seconds, be like, all right, Obama. So yeah, we started doing these get out the vote campaigns, and clearly they, you know, they were friends. Obama, I think, was smart enough to realize like Jay was someone that carried a lot of influence. He should leverage that influence. So when he did actually win, we were invited to perform at the inaugural ball. So we performed a song called History, which didn't do very well. I think universally, a lot of people did not like that song. But if you actually listen to the words of the song, they're really powerful. Jay used to actually call me nervous. So I've told this story enough that I let people know that he used to call me Nervous Neil. That was his nickname for me. So he calls me from like far away. He calls me, he's like, "You're nervous, come here." And I run over. I'm like, "Yeah, what's up, Jimmy?" And he's like, "Yo, you know, it's glad to have you back." He says something nice, but then he brings me to his room and he performs the blueprint for me, Memphis Bleak, and Steve Stout. So we're all there, and he performs it for the first time. And one of this is History, and so the I won't go over everything, but this first part. So basically, he calls a woman Victory. That's her name. A woman's name is Victory, right? And in the song, he says, "In search of victory, she keeps eluding me. If only we could be together momentarily, we could make love and make history. Why won't you visit me? Until she visits me, I'll be stuck with her sister." So Victory's sister, her name is Defeat. She gives me agony, so much agony. She brings me so much pain, so much misery, like missing your last shot and falling to your knees as the crowd screams for the other team. So, you know what, he's rapping it like that to me. And I'm listening to, and like, I'm amazed. I'm amazed at this song. And this is the song that we sing, or we performed for Obama for his inauguration, you know, very appropriate. But like I said, unfortunately, I think a lot of people hated it. Just from a musical standpoint. It like clearly, I don't know if you guys have heard it, but I remember my relationship to it is very different, because I had Jay literally saying it to me, like not to an audience, not listening on speakers. He's like tapping me in the chest, you know, like hitting me on my shoulder. Like, "Do you understand what I'm saying to you, Neil? Like, this is what we need to get. We need to get victory so we can make history." Like, and it's again, they're just very weird and surreal to have probably one of the people who will go down as one of the greatest rappers ever do this very personal performance of this song. So that's the song that we perform. I'm on stage with all these celebrities, like Mariah Carey is right here. Jamie Foxx is over here. Sting is behind me. I actually have a picture with Sting. Queen Latifah was there. One of the bandmates is freaking hilarious. It's like he somehow like photobombed the picture. So it's like him and Diddy and like these massively famous people and my boy like like on the side. And I gotta go find that picture because it's freaking hilarious to think about. But yeah, obviously at that point I'm looking around and it's very oh yeah, Stevie Wonder performed. That was an interesting one. I actually was in the bathroom with Stevie Wonder, and I rarely tell this story, but this was really wild. The bathroom had an attendant, a young African American boy. I don't know if he was like young, like at most 20, maybe he was a teenager, and he was just kind of standing there. And I'm washing my hands, and on the way out, I don't know, Stevie Wonder must have sensed him being there. And he, after, Stevie washed his hands, he's like, how you doing there, young brother? Something along those lines. And then, me and him kind of look at each other after, and he's like, oh, what just happened? Stevie's blind. How is he supposed to see this guy? And yeah, I'll always kind of remember, like, we kind of looked at each other like, what is going on over here?
Yeah, no, that sounds incredible. Fuck.
Yeah. Crazy
It's just
story.
amazing. Yeah, man, I feel like I could just talk to you forever. Like, just the stories you've got, like just picturing everything as you're kind of saying it and just being around those sort of people. I think it would just be amazing.
Yeah. It was a little ill. It was a little crazy for sure.
Yeah, far out. Okay, so what we've got now is we've got there's a few questions. We're going to run through them. So it's either this or that, and you can say either this or that, and give a real brief kind of description as to why you chose this or that. Vestax or Technics?
Vestax or Techniques? Techniques, easy. That's just the standard. The standard.
Okay, Australia or America?
No, Oz. Definitely. America's in bad shape right now. And I'm sure you'd be like, well, Oz isn't perfect either, but easily. You guys have socialized medicine or universal healthcare, whatever you want to call it. Over there, they'll let you die because someone has to make $1 before you get medicine. So no. Absolutely.
Cause? Okay. Yeah. Cause or Supreme?
Cause? Oh, Cause or Supreme. Man, okay. Rapid fire. Supreme. Sure.
Oh, why? Why?
I mean, Supreme is just a New York staple. Before it was, the clothing line of the hype beast. That's what the skater kids wore. So sure. And I think Cause is a Jersey boy, and shout out to Cause. I think he's from Jersey. I'm pretty sure he is. I like him too, but between those two, I'll take Supreme.
LeBron or Jordan?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I guess Jordan, and that's not to diminish LeBron.
Yeah.
Who knows? Later on, when LeBron retires, I might say LeBron, but at press time, it's Jordan.
Off the back of that, who's your favorite all-time NBA player?
That's way too tough, dude.
Top 3.
Sure, top 3. I mean, I'm a Knicks fan, right? So
yeah,
Patrick Ewing. Patrick Ewing is up there, of course. Bernard King, probably because he was one of the earlier, almost superstars. And let's say Magic Johnson. Sure. And I'm sure if you ask me later, I'd say something else. But right now, those are the top pick.
Yeah. Adidas or Undefeated?
Adidas, of course. But okay. I don't know. I'm not really. I haven't been officially with Adidas for a very long time. I do like Undefeated, but just overall, my history with Adidas, I'll take Adidas.
Bet. Obama or Trump?
I mean Obama, but I don't like any of our politicians just in general. But yeah, sure, definitely Obama. I wish people didn't treat our politicians in America as celebrities. They're two different things, and it's unfortunate that we do. Trump being the worst example of people just thinking a celebrity can freaking run a country. And yeah, that's why we're kind of where we're at right now. Not them, our attitude toward picking our leadership.
Rolex or Hublot?
Hublot. Okay.
Oh, is that a Jay-Z? Is that a Jay-Z call? Just off
No,
what
no,
you saw
no.
with the brand?
I get, honestly, man, as much as I've been around, I'm a streetwear head pre it becoming luxury brands. And of course, luxury brands were always kind of tied into the hip hop side of things. Eric B and Rakim used to wear, the LV joints and Gucci and blah, blah, blah. But me personally, in a bigger diatribe, like that's one of the problems right now, man. We got teenagers today aspire to buy a freaking $1,000 Gucci belt. Like that's not what we did before. I wouldn't even buy a freaking $70 pair of sneakers. Now you got these kids who want to buy $300 pair of sneakers when the minimum wage is $7.15, I think, in the United States.
Yeah.
Like there's a problem. There's just an economic problem right now. So yeah, F all luxury brands ultimately, but between the two, I like I'll choose Hublot.
Okay. Main or dessert?
Main or dessert? Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, I love the main, but I got a sweet tooth, so let's say dessert.
Puck or yay?
Right now it's like Pac. Although if you do look historically, Pac had his points where I don't think his ramblings quite reached the level of Kanye, because Kanye just has a bigger microphone now, a bigger megaphone with the way stuff is platformed. But
yeah,
who knows if Tupac at the time and Twitter and all that was around, and they were screen. One of the things that caused a bigger rift was like him saying that he slept with Faith, and that it could have been 100 times worse. Who knows? But yes, of the good, you know what? That's a tough one now too. Okay, here I'm adding an addendum.
Yeah.
If I were to measure just the good parts of all their things, just because of my familiarity with Kanye's larger body of work, I would choose Kanye, just from the good stuff that they put out to the world. Which is also not to diminish Tupac's good stuff, right? But I just know a lot more about Kanye's quote unquote genius. But yeah, when you take the whole thing, yeah, Pac easily.
Yeah. Run DMC or Tupac?
Oh yeah, Run DMC. I'm from Queens. Like that's the first. That's the Jam Master Jay is the archetype for my whole life. Aside from scratching, I would say, like, personally from my end, working with Adidas, like I was really trying to step into Jay's shoes. So absolutely easy, Run DMC.
And then the last one, Serato or True Vinyl?
Ooh, that's a good one. And I appreciate, so again, unfortunately we're in a binary thought.
Yeah. Me
saying I would choose Serato, but that does not mean I wouldn't choose vinyl. I'm a vinyl head. You see that? Like there's literally a bunch of records behind me. So, but at press time, if you were to do this right now, Serato is doing a lot of really cool things that are going to allow DJs to really explore their creativity to a next level. So, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, man, they're all the rapid fire questions. That was honestly incredible, boys.
Yeah, no, it's good to, I love that new, that's our first time doing it. It's good to you kind of get an understanding of more you, and obviously we heard the story, so it's interesting. But I think that was a good podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we
Thank you so
appreciate
much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you don't want to talk about NFT stuff or any of that type of stuff, or?
I mean,
Man,
if you're interested, then sure. I mean, that's our thing, you know. I don't know if you're
It's
deep.
up to you. I mean, I figured you would need something a little more relatable, right? I've been studying up on Instagram algorithm manipulation, and you should always talk to your niche audience. I actually, what's the current? So I'll ask you guys a question about that. Like, now clearly, if you are involved in NFTs, you have a level of belief in it, but also, matter of factually, this downturn in Bitcoin and Ethereum and cryptocurrency it's not like 2-3 years ago when you put out an NFT and all of a sudden these people are millionaires. That's just not the reality anymore. So what do you think? What do you think is the future, or, you know, what is it turned from like this and again, I'm overgeneralizing, but is it no longer a get rich quick scheme? Should you be treating this as like a long-term situation now, or? Yeah, let me know. I want to know what you guys do.
Yeah,
sure. 100%. Like originally last year, I got into it strictly for making money because I saw all the stuff that you were saying, like people making millions of dollars, like just from flipping these random photos of apes and random photos of these crypto punks. And I got into it exact same time, roughly, was interested in all that. And it was good. I was able to make money last year, but at the start of this year, it was kind of the downfall of it all. There was a lot of bad news. Crypto started going down, you know, inflation started going up. So it's all been, but to answer your question, it is definitely a long-term thing. And I know that's like, so like, oh, it's the same as every other investment. Of course, it's a long-term thing, but I definitely truly believe in like NFTs and what they can actually do to change businesses in the real world. Like most businesses, in my opinion, eventually will realize that they can integrate NFT technology somehow, if not cryptocurrency technology. So I'm more of like a crypto dude. I love NFTs and I'm building an NFT project, but NFTs are really just a technology that's built on top of Ethereum. Ethereum is one of the biggest, that's what I'm most passionate about. I think Ethereum can definitely change the way that banking works, just in general, the way that the world runs. So it's all interesting. But for us, it's like we're just using NFTs as a exclusive membership. So like basically all you have to do is own our NFT and then you get access to everything that we do. So it's just better. It's a better version of Patreon, you know?
I'm not as versed as you guys, but I'm aware. I'm more aware probably than the average person who just knows about the apes or whatever. But yeah, that's interesting. I understand what you're talking, and you know, right? So blockchain, right? So attaching stuff to a blockchain and all that, and that's actually really interesting. Maybe I should pick your brain about that, because
always open to. Yeah, I mean, I just think like it's just a game changer. Like Patreon, you pay every month, whereas with NFTs, they pay a one-time thing and then they can go and sell it later for a profit. They can choose when they want to be in and out. It's just the way I see NFTs and what's so game changing about it is it puts the control in the hands of the consumer, which is the most important thing. We're going further every year. We're going further and further and further away from the consumer having power. These big corporations have all the power. So it's about, I guess, our generation and the younger generations realize that that's just not the way the future is going to work. It's about everyone working together, everyone having an opinion. So that's kind of why I'm so passionate about it.
How old are you guys?
I'm 20. He's 21.
You guys are babies.
I'm 24.
Yeah.
Lord, man.
I think one of the really, really interesting use cases as well, which I think you'd probably be fascinated in, given how heavy you are in the music industry. And I, like, by way of background, like I've done law school and I'm going to be a lawyer in a couple of months. So like the whole actual contractual side of things really interests me. And you start to see guys like Mark Cuban, for example, with the Dallas Mavericks. Like he'll start putting the tickets as NFTs, and that'll be a digital ticket to get into the event or into the game. And then if Luka Doncic does an incredible play, then they'll airdrop you something else again. And then there's a few music artists that are starting to get into it as well, in terms of like Snoop Dogg, for example. I don't know if you've seen what he's done, but I know there's some guys where they'll attach their work, their music, to an NFT. You buy that NFT, and then you've then got that exclusive ownership, like the rights to that NFT, depending on how the terms and conditions of it work. and then you can then use that on overlays with your videos or other things that you're making. And then as you sell it, every time you sell it, royalties then kick back to the to the artist.
Yeah, so
But I
essentially an NFT where it's like maybe a beat or maybe it's him singing. And so then someone who buys that can then say, I'm the only person on the planet who owns this. I can now use it in my song and there's no one can do anything about it because I legally have his word. So like people can make songs with Snoop Dogg when they never actually bought a feature, which is pretty game changing in my opinion. But it's only going to change the way the music industry works as well. Because I'm not as, you would know so much more, but these record companies, they're the ones that actually take all the money. Whereas if the artist was to go through this, then they can go directly straight to the consumer and there's no middleman and there's all the money goes straight to them and they can control it all.
I mean, I think currently the streaming world is the ones who are taking all the money these days.
Yeah. For sure.
There's actually a producer here. I don't know if you guys are aware, but you should look him up. His name is Illmind. And not only is he using NFTs, but he minted his own cryptocurrency, I guess. And say that again? Illmind, ILLMIND. And
okay.
He does, I don't know the details, but basically he treats his beat kit as like an NFT. So, you know, beat kit has like a drum or samples or a synth or whatever. And he attaches through that, like if you make a beat like, or someone uses it and makes a beat off of it, they'll get you'll get royalties as the owner of that beat kit. And I definitely think it's really interesting. I'm really happy. Like the one, of course, really bad issue was the whole climate, the power issue, the proof of work versus proof of stake and all that.
Yeah.
Right? Is that right? Proof of work versus right?
Yep.
And now it's done, right? They've totally crossed over. And so I've definitely like the technology. I'm interested to see what happens now, right? Because I think that first iteration of people just let's turn a fart into an NFT and sell it. Like I think they've that's calmed down. Doing dumb things have calmed down, and now hopefully people will kind of grow it. So ultimately, why I'm asking that, I've kept my Ethereum is what you're saying, and that was the move, right?
Sure. For sure.
Hell yeah.
Time in hands. That's me. Thank you. That's all I want to know. These 20 years old, these guys, these young gentlemen have confirmed I've made the right move. Damn it.
Hell yeah.
Not financial
yeah.
advice. Not financial advice.
Maybe I'll pick your brains about, but basically, whatever, if you want to include this in the podcast. Like I used to make mixtapes. That was really my thing. Like that's and I want to continue to do it, but for various reasons, number one, like the medium of them, like it ended up becoming mixed CDs. Like people don't do that anymore. These kids, it's so far gone. Like I don't. Do you guys even know what an MP3 is? Like okay, there's people who like my nieces and nephews who are like 12 years old. That all they know is Spotify. Yeah, what are you talking about? I press the button and the music comes up. So I actually was selling like these cassette USBs for a while that looked like novelty cassettes, but when you popped it open, it was a USB. But I would love to figure out how I can distribute them. Or the unfortunate issue with my situation, of course, is that my mixtapes are illegal. I make mixes of other people's music, remixes, unofficial. So I don't even really own it to begin with. And I need to figure out a medium to figure out how to work around that. And I've passed it to a couple of people, but that's what it always boils down to. Like the conventional thinking of how to do it just will not work. I have to figure out another way to do it. And yeah, maybe one day I'll ask you guys some advice on that.
There's definitely ways to workshop it. I'm already thinking of stuff. So yeah, we can definitely talk about that time.
Very cool.
Lewis's legal mind clicking over in the background there.
Yeah, it's going, because that's the other really interesting thing that's happening in the space at the moment is, like, you might have seen with the whole Yuga, like, Bored Ape stuff, like, they're being taken to court by, like, well, they're taking someone to court around the IP usage of NFTs, and then they're also getting investigated by the SEC over in the States. And I think until that first case is decided around what happens with the IP, who owns it, who can use it, and, you know, can you put stuff on the blockchain that you don't necessarily own in the first place, and then the contracts and all that. I think until we get that first bit of clarifications, then we'll be able to see how to build on from there.
Yeah, it's all way early stages, right? Like, even yourself, you know more about crypto and Ethereum than most people, right? You're investing in a software. You're not investing in like a person necessarily. It's a software company. We're investing in like the next Google type thing. So no one really knows. All these laws and stuff have to come through first.
Right,
And we're
right.
still early. That's why it's a long-term game. You know, we don't necessarily know what's going to be, but you know, it's like investing back in whatever 2003 or something. So yeah,
For sure.
One thing that I wanted to ask you about was like what you think of what Kanye's kind of done in terms of going from like being that music mogul to what he's done with Yeezy as kind of like a streetwear brand, and I suppose just kind of him generally with like what's going on there with him in your kind of view and opinion.
Oh, I mean, I think it's, unless he has misled people, like it's pretty well documented that he is bipolar. He says he's bipolar anyway. I just unfortunately think he's having some episodes that are unfortunately playing out on a major platform for everybody to look at. And in his current state, I don't like what he's doing at all. I know a lot of people have stopped playing his music outside, at least. And I personally don't support what he's doing. Like ultimately how he makes money is his exposure, his mouth, his clothes, his music. And in his current state, I don't know what's happening. Now, fortunately, people have this knowledge of possibly him having mental episodes, and him, because of just how he is, being very easily not manipulated, but you know, there's people who there's a reason why certain things get a lot of clicks on Facebook. Like there's literally an algorithm. They know, like, okay, if I give you this and you like this, I could keep pushing you down this rabbit hole. And clearly that's how Kanye's brain works. He is currently, as far as I know, unless something has changed within the last 24 hours, he's getting sued for libel from George Floyd's family. And that's a consequence of, you know, in America, you could say whatever you want, but there's a consequence. You might get punched in the face. You might get sued for $250 million. And so that's what has happened to him. As I said before, when you talked about Pac and Kanye, I think he's very smart. I think to become a billionaire, just to become one, not being one, right? As I said, I have issues with that, but it's not easy to do that. And his ability to actually have done it is commendable. I wish they use their money more for doing something really great for humanity, as opposed to buying a really ugly Balenciaga jacket. But you know, that everyone has the freedom to do what they want to do, right? But yeah, I don't know. Ultimately, though, I just feel kind of bad for the guy, and not pity. I feel bad. He doesn't have a proper support system around him to help guide him, and that is the general, like, for people who know about his mother passing away. That's what they point to. They're like, his mother was the person who reined him in, or, you know, I don't know what the right words to use, but that was his guidance system. And when he lost his guidance system, he essentially lost his mind. And unfortunately, he does have a massive platform that just allows him to have a reach that other people wouldn't if they weren't him. You know, what he says is, there's aspects of what he says that are very dangerous for various reasons. And, you know, he is absolutely causing harm to people. Like, the only thing like very quantifiable is like the stuff he said about George Floyd, which it's been proven in a court of law, which is as good as a point of fact that we can have, that he died because he was murdered. Like, this is proved already. And he goes on and says, no, it's not. It's because he had fentanyl or whatever in his body. And like, why would you do this? Like, why, you know, and we have precedent now, like Alex Jones, what does he owe, $1 billion for the whole Sandy Hook thing? So, you know, I don't know, but ultimately, I guess knowing the stuff that Kanye has contributed, definitely musically, I hope he gets help. I hope that, but at the same time, there's another group of people who just think, you know what, he knows exactly what he's doing and he's manipulating everybody and it's working. Like, not even necessarily manipulating, but why would he go on a show like Drink Champs? To get clicks, to get likes, to get views. And that's exactly what he got. Like Nori tweeted afterwards, he's like, I got more views than like NFL football or something. I forgot what he wrote, but essentially there's this group of people that thinks he knows exactly what he's doing and he doesn't care that it hurts people or whatever. He's just doing it because he knows it's going to work. And that's another interesting take, which I don't really subscribe to. I was actually, speaking of, you know, one of his earlier crazy things that he did, I was at the VH1, I was performing with Kanye, with Jay-Z, when his first biggest faux pas was probably when he goes up, when Taylor Swift is, you know, getting her video of the year award, and he goes on and he says, Beyonce should have won, or whatever he said. I was there. I was in the room with my mouth like with everybody else, like, yo, what did he just do? What did this guy just do? Yeah, and we literally all took a plane the next day to LA to do the Jay Leno show. And like, we were all on a plane together. Like, clearly he is not okay. Like, even back then. And there's definitely a school of thought where people are like, look, man, this guy's been doing this for like the last 8 years. Like, how many second chances is he gonna get? And to be fair, on the other side is that this is a rinse and repeat. He does something fucked up, a new news cycle comes in, maybe he fixes it just enough or makes an excuse that people accept, and he does this shit again. And rinse and repeat for the last 6 years. So I don't know. I'm interested to see if this time he's just gone too far. And people gotta remember, like $250 million to a billionaire is nothing. Like, is nothing. Zero. That's chump change. So even if he does lose that, that's not gonna hurt him in any way, shape, or form.
DJ Neil Armstrong, thank you so much for joining us, man. It's been absolutely incredible to hear your journey, starting off as a young fellow who was keen in the street world and the hip hop world, and just what you've been able to build to. And I think the most incredible thing that I've taken out of this interview is everything that you've achieved. You're one of the most humble men I've ever met in my life, just given the people you know, who you've interacted with, and what you've done. So it's been an absolute honor and privilege on behalf of us. Thank you so much.
For sure. I appreciate the kindness. Thank y'all. Peace.
Thanks, Neil.
The light facts and take notes. Biggie Smalls for mayor, the rap slayer, the hooker layer. Motherfucker, say your prayer.
What's going on, y'all? This is DJ Neil Armstrong, straight out of NYC. Shout out to the Beefy Blokes. The mint is live at beefyblokes.com.